February 4th of 2019. I'm glad everybody got here safely, given that it's an ice rink outside. Seeing that we have quorum, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an adopted agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our minutes are approved. Our first business item is number 2019-29, the City of Rosemont Umore Vermilion Crossing Comprehensive Plan Amendment, review file number 20584-16. Patrick Boylan, you are up.
Thank you, council members.
Same problem.
This amendment before us today is City of Rosemont. City of Rosemont is a emerging suburban edge community, as indicated on the map, surrounded by Egan, Neighbor Grove Heights, Cottage Grove in Washington County, Vermilion, Coates, Empire, and Apple Valley. Site itself, showing the regional systems. There's a regional trail nearby, lift station. There's a regional interceptor nearby. And placed in just south of the urbanizing area, or really on the edge of the urbanizing area for the City of Rosemont. I just want to do a little bit of background for you. We did have an amendment. So what we're talking about today is this Vermilion Crossing. Just a few months ago, there was another Umore amendment, which is the Umore Opus amendment, which is to the east of the site. So showing the amendment before us today, just the proximity of it. So one thing in the staff report, just another little sidebar, is that this was left in there accidentally. My fault. However, in the staff report, there's also this, which does say that there was a AOAR. The original AOAR was 5 years ago, and they updated it in the fall of 2018. So just want to make sure that everyone understands the official record. There is reference to that. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those. The development, or the proposal before us today, is 435 acres. Right now, Umore Park, the majority of it, is currently guided as agriculture research. Just kind of for context, this is Dakota County DCTC, Dakota County
Technical College.
College. Thank you, DCTC, Technical College. And the site itself is approximately here. And so the large green area is Umore Park, and just for reference, Umore Park does extend below County Road 46, but that is in Empire Township. So today we'll be talking about this portion of Rosemont. So the site itself in this irregular shape is 435 acres, and the purpose is to facilitate development of 1,556 residential units and 377,000 square feet of commercial uses. Again, showing that the MUSA line is here, and then long-term service area is the pink, so south of DCTC and south of the lighter pink area is the long-term area. And again, showing where the MUSA would be extended to serve this particular amendment. As I said before, the existing and proposed guiding. Existing guiding is this agriculture research. The proposed guiding is a mix of community commercial, which is right up by the college, right on the highway, county highway. 20.2 acres of high density residential, a little under 50 acres of medium, my back, a little bit more of that than medium. About 110 of medium, and over 276 acres of low density residential. This concept plan only at this time. Looks like it's being refined at this point. Just in terms of Thrive, says that this particular community is the emerging suburban edge. We expect it to develop residential development between 3 and 5 units per acre. So we have some changes in the low, medium, and high density, and the overall expected density will be 3.47 to 5 units per acre. So it meets the Thrive policies. Before I get to this, just the proposed amendment conforms to regional systems. It's consistent with regional policies and compatible with plans of adjacent affected jurisdictions. The proposed action attached the review record and allow the city to put it into place and find that it does not change city's forecast, and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for sanitary sewers transportation forecast. I'm actually going to read the advisory comment just for the record for the sanitary sewer component. The transportation forecast advisory comments are important, but the sanitary sewer one is the most important. So I'm going to read it verbatim from my staff report. So the advisory comment in your staff report for environmental services for wastewater is that the amendment did not include information on how wastewater services will be provided for the AAR. Therefore, the city's currently approved comprehensive sewer plan is in effect, indicating that the service to the AAR project area will be provided wastewater services through the interceptor located along County Road 42 as originally intended. Prior to any additional development within the Umar area, the city will need to revise its sanitary sewer plan consistent with the 2014 memorandum and commitment for flow monitoring. There is representatives of the city here today, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Council members, would folks like to hear from the city?
Sure, if they feel up to it.
Folks from Rosemont, please. Since you made the trip, tell us about your comp plan amendment.
My name is Kim Lindquist. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. And I just want to say we've been working with the university for about 15 to 16 years on this project, as long as I've been there. And so we're very excited about having our first residential development. We've got some things to fine tune with the developer and with the university and with your staff, but we're on the right path, and I think we know what we have to do. And a lot of those issues came up as the city reviewed the concept plan. So what you saw was the concept, which is a non-binding approval that the city gave. And so now the next step is to really get to the level of detail where we can work out some of these issues and come through with a PUD approval that really sets the project up for the future. So we're really excited about it. The developer's a great developer, and we're hoping that you'll see some dirt moving probably in about a year. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy. Otherwise, we're good.
Councilmember Dorfman?
Madam Chair, thanks. So any affordable housing projected for some of the higher density residential in the project?
Yep. Councilmember, there is some interest in providing affordable housing, and certainly when you see some of the development components, the lot sizes are really something different than we've certainly experienced in Rosemont. So they're looking at 28-foot wide lots, 32-foot wide lots, 50-foot wide lots. So they're really trying to get some dense dense units in there, and also some life cycle housing for us. So real variety, and I think that'll shine through with some of the costs associated.
Nice, thank you.
Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just reflecting back when you were talking about the journey with the university, my first meeting after being appointed to the Dakota County Planning Commission had the exciting conversation about aggregate, but aggregate from this site and the vision for that. So I'm glad that I'm able to be part of actually at least moving to a concept plan.
Right.
So
Yep.
I'll move the matter.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rosemont, for your collaboration with the university on the affordable and life cycle housing. And thanks for making the trip today.
No problem.
Our next business item, 2019-31, City of Edina Office Residential District Density Amendment. This is for the 7200 to 7250 France Avenue. Review file 20413-17. Mike Larson, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As the chair mentioned, the City of Edina has submitted this comprehensive plan amendment for review regarding density of at 7200 and 7250 France Avenue in the office with the Office Residential District designation. As shown in Figure 1 of the staff report, Thrive MSP 2040 gives the City of Edina a community designation of urban. The area affected by the amendment is shown in red in the southeast portion of the city, which is located on the west side of France Avenue between West 72nd and Gallagher Drive. As shown in Figure 2, this map shows the regional systems in relationship to the amendment location. The 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail travels south on the south side of Gallagher Drive, just south of the amendment location. Like you've seen with previous amendments in Edina, the city is changing the allowable density for a specific location, in this case 7200 and 7250 France. The allowable density range changes from 12 to 30, from 12 to 30 units an acre to 12 to 60 units per acre. The guiding land use again remains office residential, which is the guiding land use all along the west side of France Avenue. The amendment is related to supporting a specific development proposal, upwards of 300 units with 60 units or 20% affordable at 60% of the area's median income. Staff find that the proposed amendment conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. Therefore, the proposed action for you today is to adopt the attached review record and to allow the City of Edina to place the Office Residential District Density Amendment for 7200 and 7250 France into effect. 2, find that the amendment does not change the city's forecasts, and 3, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasted housing. And that concludes my presentation.
Council members, any questions? Councilmember Dorfman?
No question. I was just going to move it. There's lots going on in Edina. It's very exciting.
Okay. The action is moved. Is there a second?
Second?
All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Michael. Our next business item is 2019-32 City of Woodbury Preserve at City Place Comp Plan Amendment. This is review file 20607-9. Corin Wendell, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh.
Normally, I don't have a
Not.
pseudonym. So Corinne is traveling and did have plans to make it back to St. Paul by noon today. So I've been in communication with her. So I know about this amendment and I feel comfortable in presenting it. So here I am.
Thank you, Patrick.
Welcome. The amendment before us today is for the city of Woodbury, located just south of Interstate 94. Woodbury is surrounded by the cities of Oakdale, Lake Elmo, and Afton, this particular amendment is 17.86 acres, and it's located on the corner of Hudson Road and Spring Hill Drive. It's guided as places to work and in the existing land use plan. So as you can see, the city of Woodbury suburban edge community, the regional infrastructure, or regional systems rather, in the city, showing this location. I think the proximity to Interstate 94 is probably the most obvious amenity, but close to trails and things like that too. So as I said before, it's 17.86 acres from places to work to high density residential. The amendments for a new 253 unit market rate apartment complex. We're expecting 3 to 5 units per acre for the city of Woodbury. This particular amendment is the density is 14.16 units per acre. This site was also the subject of an EAW last summer, which we concluded is complete and accurate. Set on the current and future proposed land use map, showing that the places to work on the left and the proposed for high density residential. The findings before you on the staff report is that it conforms to regional system plans, it's consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. The proposed action before you and then onto the council would be to adopt the review record and allow the city of Woodbury to preserve at City Place Comp Plan Amendment into effect, and to find the amendment does not change the city's forecast, and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecast, natural resources, and housing. I did have a chance to take a look at the advisory comments, if you have any questions at this time, the advisory comments mostly for housing relate to We like to remind cities that they need to plan for not only the current 2011 to 2020 affordable housing, but in their 2040 update to plan and guide for enough land and high enough densities to meet their need, their share of the region's need from 2021 to 2030. Available for any questions?
Any questions for Patrick about the Woodbury Amendment? Is there a motion to adopt the action?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Patrick. Our next business item is 2019-33, the 2019 Annual Livable Communities Fund Distribution Plan. Paul Burns, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Paul Burns, manager of the Livable Communities Program. And as you may recall, we've been carrying on a dialogue with committee members and stakeholders for the past several months. And so today we're here before you to ask for your action on the fund distribution plan and go over some of the points that we've heard back and forth over the past couple of months, and finally present the proposed action to you. So far what we've heard from you and interested parties is guidance to make smaller jobs projects eligible and competitive for the tax-based revitalization account, and we've incorporated language to that effect in the plan. We're also pretty excited about making the local housing incentives account available through low-income housing tax credit sub-allocators in addition to the Minnesota Housing Agency. And so we're hopeful that we can help some targeted projects that we might not have otherwise seen. Also, we refined some of the scoring to give better credit for projects that do a better design job without taking away from any of the other funding criteria. In addition to that, we've eliminated the threshold criteria for transit-oriented development applications, and those issues have been incorporated into the competitive scoring process. So what we were seeing is they were sort of a check-the-box kind of thing that communities may or may not have complied with, and so this way we give points for projects that incorporate those things into their project. And finally, the consolidation of the tax-based revitalization account TOD category back into the regular program, and additional funding has been added to that category to help address the additional projects that we might see. And so funding levels for the local housing incentives account, we're pleased that we still have enough balance in the fund to add $1 million to the statutory base, so that we're going to continue to be able to offer $2.5 million this year again instead of the $1.5 million statutory base. For the demonstration account, historically on the regular category, we've been funding $7.5 million. Recent years we've been able to supplement that, but unfortunately this year we don't have additional balances to add to that account for that category. But we are still able to fund the transit-oriented development category of the LCDA at $5 million, which is what we've been funding it at, although last year we had some extra funds. And again, this just as we're trying to do a better job of matching up the livable communities fund distribution plan with budget. So you'll be seeing a budget amendment in the coming months. The tax-based revitalization account, again, the statutory funding level is $5.5 million, and we've been able to fund seeding equitable environmental development in areas of concentrated poverty at $1 million. This year we only have enough balance for $500,000, and it hasn't been heavily used, but it's a nice thing to be able to offer when the appropriate projects come along. And then, as I mentioned earlier, 900,000 to the added to the existing 5 million for the regular category. In addition to that, the D line will now be eligible for development grants under the TOD, Livable Communities Demonstration Account, TOD category, and the rush line will now be eligible for pre-development. So this is the schedule. You've seen this before, but in addition to this, tomorrow and next Tuesday, we'll be holding the first round of voluntary design team sessions where prospective applicants have signed up to meet with a group of volunteer designers, architects, landscape architects, urban designers to get feedback and ideas on how to make their projects either more livable communities, walkable neighborhoods, or more transit-oriented development features. We also are going to hold another series in April of design team workshops, and communities will be able to sign up for those, again, on a voluntary basis. So that, along with the outreach efforts we've been doing, working with metro cities, and the project concept plan process, we're hoping that we can really help advise prospective applicants to be as successful as possible. And then the first application deadlines will be on May 1st. So with that, the proposed action is to approve the 2019 Livable Communities Fund Distribution Plan and direct staff to increase the authorized budget and a council budget amendment to come before you in the future.
Council members, any questions? Councilmember Dorfman, please.
Madam Chair, thank you. So, Paul, I missed the last meeting of this committee and some of the discussion, but I think I've sort of caught up with it. But I'm just curious, the red line version of the plan that was in our information today, does that have significant changes from what was discussed 2 weeks ago? I mean, it just seemed like there were lots of red lines, and so I was a little overwhelmed by that.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Dorfman, there are minor wording adjustments to just refine the wording that we've had, but by and large, all that bleeding that you saw on the pages was to implement these things that I just went through.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of red lines.
Any other questions?
And maybe I could just, so there were a number of cities that wanted to, during the last couple of months, have you been able to have communication with some of those cities that were interested in talking about some of the TOD funding and other issues that they wanted to see?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Dorfman, yes. We have been in contact with quite a number of cities. As a matter of fact, Ms. Lindquist, who was just here from Rosemount, is also on our Livable Communities Advisory Committee. She's a really valuable member. We've got some great people on that committee. I consulted with Ms. Lindquist and a number of other people. We contacted a number of other communities around the region. It's clearly spoken to Minneapolis and St. Paul. They're not always happy about everything that we propose, but we've also been in communication with metro cities, and we've tried to be as thorough as we possibly can to air some of all of these changes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Paul, I just want to thank you for the continuous improvement of livable communities and how responsive we've been to stakeholders and their needs, because ultimately this is about creating livable communities and providing grants that are going to translate into real things on the ground.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to approve the Livable Communities Distribution Fund plan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved. Thank you. Our next item is an information item. It's about the affordable housing production in the Twin Cities, the trends in production, and policy responses. Welcome, Kristen and Tara.
Hello. I have brought a copy of the MetroStats report that will be published immediately following this meeting. should be a copy for each of you.
So this is like an almost advanced copy.
Yes. Madam Chair, council members, thank you for this opportunity to share the latest information we have about affordable housing production in the region. I know it's an issue that many of you are concerned about, as are we. I'm Kristen Rivaturez. I'm a senior researcher on the Community Development Research Team. With me today, planning analyst Tara Beard, and together we're going to highlight some key findings from the 2017 survey and relate some of those findings and trends to the Council's housing policies and strategies. In preparing for this presentation today, Tara and I realized that we really crammed a lot into the information item. And instead of cutting slides, we decided we would just make up things in pacing. So if we talk way too fast and it's getting out of control, please stop us, slow us down, ask some questions. Before we begin, I do want to thank the broader team of contributors to this work. Joel Nihus, the researcher on our team, Matt Schroeder, who helps validate our survey results, and our database administrators in IS, who help get our data posted to the web and pushed out through our community profiles and download data. All of the information we talk about today is now available on metrocouncil.org as of 2 o'clock this afternoon. So tracking the region's affordable housing production is part of our statutory responsibilities under the Livable Communities Act. We arrive at our data set and counts through an annual survey of cities and townships across the region. We ask detailed information about their residential development, including unit price points, income and age restrictions, and funding sources. We then validate that information through parcel data, conversations with city staff, community websites such as Housing Link, and other council data that we have, such as service availability charge reports. Our units are counted at the time that local governments issue building permits. So as I said, my focus will be on the affordable housing data and trends, and Tara will describe how those findings connect to the strategies and activities put forward in the Council's housing policy plan, adopted in 2015. So hopefully it'll be a good balance of what and so what for you today. The story of the region's housing affordability can feel somewhat bifurcated. Relative to other metro areas in the U.S., the Twin Cities is an affordable place to live. For example, Greater MSP publishes a regional indicators dashboard every year that ranks our metro area in comparison to our peer regions, which include places like Denver, Seattle, Portland, and Atlanta. They look at various measures that relate to economic competitiveness. And in 2018, the Twin Cities Metro ranked #1 for a low rate of housing cost burden, ranked #3, again of 12, for our modest rent growth for a 2-bedroom unit, and it ranked 5th for our median home purchase price. So fairly good marks for housing affordability from that perspective. Yet our message for you today, which is likely to echo things you've certainly heard before, is that the Twin Cities is in fact facing a staggering shortfall of affordable housing. In 2017, just over a quarter of the region's households were housing cost burdened. That translates to over 340,000 households that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs. As we've shared with you many times as well, the region has the largest racial disparities in home ownership rates in the country. So it's a bit more complicated than we're an affordable place to live. So our narrative requires us to hold these two concepts at the same time, that yes, relative to other places, the Twin Cities is affordable, but looking closer, not all households in our region have that experience. Just a quick review of what we mean when we talk about housing affordability. We are using HUD's published area median income. In 2017, based on a family of 4, we have the figures there for you. I'm just quickly highlighting that another metric that we talk about often is areas of concentrated poverty, and that's based on 185% of the federal poverty threshold. That roughly equates to about 50% AMI level. So just to kind of square our measures of various things. When it comes to affordable housing production, in 2011, the council changed its threshold to include housing units and households that are at 60% AMI and under, which you see in front of you there. It's worth noting that area median income isn't a particularly resonant metric in our communities. It's based on gross income, not take-home pay. It's let alone take-home pay that isn't already earmarked for other pressing expenses like student loan debt or transportation costs. Depending on the community, 60% area median income would be relatively high for a family of four. So we want to just acknowledge that in many ways, this measurement doesn't reflect on the ground realities, but it's what we use when we talk about this issue. The flip side of the affordability equation, housing costs, you see here the thresholds for rental units and owner-occupied units by unit size.
Ladies, I see a question from Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the previous slide, when you're talking about the income, that only includes cash income, right? So if you get housing assistance or medical assistance or other sorts of non-cash supports from the government, that would not be included in that income, right?
That is my understanding, but I will double check for you, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you.
The issue of affordable housing touches every corner of our region. Every city and township has a share of households that have incomes at or below 60% area median income. Here we have our 2017 housing affordability estimates information. So this is the most current information we can have about this topic mapped here for you. The region-wide housing cost burden rate, as I said earlier, was 28%, but the rate of cost burden among low-income households is much higher. This is our long-term trend chart on on housing production, both for market rate units and affordable units. In 2017, 1 in every 10 added units was affordable, while market rate housing has rebounded from the low production points during the recession. Affordable housing production, as you can see, has not. So this production adds up or doesn't, as the case may be. In the last long-range planning cycle, the council and an advisory panel determined that in order to meet the demand from new household growth expected this decade, so between 2011 and 2020, the region would need to add over 52,000 units of affordable units. That doesn't address the unmet existing need that may have existed in 2011. The region has grown as expected, adding over 83,000 new households between 2010 and 2017, but we've only produced about 17% of those 52,000 plus units that we said we needed, and we only have 3 years left to go. When we dig into this gap by geography, it's clear that affordable housing production has been imbalanced spatially. We've grouped some of the Thrive community designations into slightly bigger buckets here and put up the allocation of affordable housing need numbers in blue versus the production levels in green. Just so no one has to do any eyeball math, I've included the percentages here of what that translates to. We see that urban centers and urban communities have made progress on meeting the new demand numbers, while the region's suburban edge and emerging suburban edge communities have only produced about 7% of what was needed during this decade so far. Getting even more geographically granular, we have highlighted the cities and townships that have added 10 or more affordable units in 2017. That equals to 11 communities total. At other points, we have mapped communities that have added any affordable housing. So I just want to point out that that would double the number of communities at about 20. This is the least geographic spread that we've seen in recent years. For example, in 2016, we had 57 communities adding at least one affordable unit. In 2015, it was 35 communities. So for the region to have only had 20 communities or so that have added any affordable housing in 2017 was really exceptional. Looking at the same map, but with a broader time frame of affordable production, cities and townships that have added 10 or more units since 2011 are highlighted, with the top producers listed on the right-hand side. We've also highlighted 8 cities that have formally adopted mixed income policies, including Brooklyn Park, Chaska, Edina, Golden Valley, Minneapolis, Minnetonka, Shoreview, and St. Louis Park.
It's my turn.
Get in here, Tara.
Madam Chair, committee members. Again, my name is Tara Beard. I'm a planning analyst for housing policy in the region, and I'm going to take a quick moment and indulge myself to just insert some positivity into this presentation, which can sometimes have some not great realities that we have to face. But I want to share just how nice it was to put this presentation together in the way that it allowed me to reflect on how much we have been able to do since the adoption of the amended housing policy plan in 2015. I am so grateful that the council adopted such a strong and actionable plan. And I just really wanted to make sure that each of you knew and were aware of the impact we have because of that leadership. People talk about policy plans being put on shelves, and I can reassure you that my housing policy plan is well worn and always within arm's reach, except not right now. So thanks for that. I'm going to jump in now to talk about how we implement the HPP, and there's so much in there. Obviously, we can't work on every piece of the housing policy plan all the time, and so we rely a lot on internal collaborations like the data and research that you're hearing about today from Kristen, as well as our external collaborators, our partners, our local governments, housing advocates, other groups, and we kind of always are using that rubric to know where to prioritize and focus the implementation authority given in the housing policy plan. Beginning with mixed income housing, Kristen's map just showed you where there are adopted mixed income or inclusionary housing policies in the region. And those were, by and large, adopted after 2015 when the housing policy plan was adopted. We've been a really big part, very involved in the development of those policy plans, and we continue to. So, and back to the housing policy plan and the policy guidance that gives us, noting that it tells us to provide local governments with data, research, and best practices on the development of mixed income housing and related strategies. So we've been doing that. Thanks. What we've been doing is continuing to provide the tools to communities to look at the leverage that they have to ask for affordable units and market rate developments. We've updated the mixed income housing feasibility calculator that we had developed for us in 2016. It's got a more user-friendly interface, and it's got a refresh of data so that the numbers in there are even more accurate to help communities figure out whether or not a mixed income policy could work for them. We get so many calls asking for technical assistance or information on the policies that have been passed throughout the region, and we are seeing lots of conversation and discussion about mixed income policy and comprehensive plans, not just amongst the communities that have already adopted a policy, but many communities that are committing to explore it as a policy in the next 10 years.
Back to the data. Looking again at the 2017 affordable units, we had just over 1,700, as you can see there. One of the trends that we spotted, which is not new, but a continuation of past production that we've seen, is that most of the affordable units that were added in 2017 are at the higher end of affordable. So they're in that 51 to 60% area median income range. Only 23% were at lower ranges than that. When we changed our housing production survey in 2015 to get more specific information about AMI levels, to Tara's point about trying to get more granular and provide better information and resources to the region's communities, we can now sort of chart this trend over time. A few slides ago, we shared that there were 142,000 households with incomes up to 30% AMI, and 85% of those households are cost burden. Were cost burden in 2017, yet we've produced 534 new affordable units at that level since 2014. For households with incomes at 50% AMI, we've produced just over 1,700 new units at that level. So this is one of the ways in which even new affordable unit production isn't necessarily accessible to all households that are needing affordable housing. Another trend that we want to highlight is that multifamily really remains the predominant housing type of affordable housing. Nearly all, 98% of our added units in 2017 were rental units in multifamily properties. Looking at affordable units only by type over time, we have here multifamily, single-family detached, and townhomes. We can see this trend even more clearly. The production of new single-family homes and townhomes has been low for several years, but it hit new lows in 2017 with only 25 affordable homes added to the region in 2017. Coming almost solely from Habitat for Humanity and other land trust acquisitions. We had no new affordable townhomes produced in 2017.
So unlike mixed income housing, affordable home ownership was not a topic we were working on implementing right off the gate when the housing policy plan was adopted. But as the data show and as external partners have validated, we need to pay more attention to the discrepancy in the focus on affordable multifamily and rental, and make sure that we're also addressing the very real need for affordable home ownership opportunities. The HPP obviously strongly supports and advocates for the importance of affordable homeownership as a housing choice, and gives us the guidance to provide technical assistance and help collaborate with communities. So I'm really happy to share that at the end of this month, we will be hosting a half-day workshop highlighting 3 really important affordable homeownership tools that enjoy success throughout the region, but not in all parts of the region. We not only will be providing basic information about manufactured home ownership communities, cooperative home ownership models, and community land trusts, but we will be giving participants a tool and next steps, the tools and the next steps they need to develop those models in the parts of the region that don't already enjoy them.
Going back to this slide on affordable housing production by type, I just wanted to add a bit more context to even the most productive type, which is that affordable rental unit production since 2011. If we were to add up that blue line from 2011 to 2017, we would arrive at nearly 8,000 new affordable rental units being added to the region over that time period. This brings us to the, kind of the burning question that many of us have about affordable housing production. What is the net change in affordable units in any given year or time frame? Our framing so far has focused on whether or not we're keeping pace with new demand from household growth, but the question here is a little bit different. Is new production even keeping pace with known or estimated losses in affordability? I want to be very clear. There is no clear region-wide picture of affordable unit losses. Tracking the ongoing affordability of existing housing is very challenging, especially for units that don't receive subsidy, referred to as naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAA. NOAA is a subset of the affordable housing market, and it's rightfully identified as at risk because it is part of the private market. And NOAA properties can increase rents as the market allows, or after completing renovations or upgrades, or after a property sale. We also want to stress that NOAA units don't necessarily house the low-income households that need affordable housing because there are no income restrictions. So we can understand NOAA as part of the overall supply of affordable housing, but not necessarily in terms of how it's addressing the overall need for affordable housing in the region. So last year, Minnesota Housing published a report about loss of NOAA units. They specifically looked at the sale of Class B and C multifamily properties. This was a sample of NOAA buildings where they had complete data on pre and post sale rents. And they applied what they found from that sample to the broader picture of NOAA properties in the Twin Cities region. They estimated that the region has lost about 10,500 NOAA units since 2010, averaging out to be about 1,300 per year. So we sort of shaved 1 year off here in the total we provided to account for that our start time is 2011, not 2010. And if we look at that affordable housing, or I'm sorry, the affordable rental unit production over this time period, and just compare it to this, example of a subset of affordable rental unit losses, it's pretty clear that we are losing more affordable units than we are gaining through new production.
So I don't think that NOAA was the universally adopted term at the time of the adoption of the housing policy plan, but the preservation of unsubsidized affordable units was absolutely on everyone's radar. And the HPP, of course, gives us the guidance to collaborate with regional housing partners and funders to identify priorities for preserving affordable housing and available resources, and provide technical assistance and tools for local governments to preserve NOAA housing. And so what we have been doing and continuing to do is be a part of that conversation and daylighting what needs to be daylighted, and even putting our money where our mouths are. So we have the first sort of trailblazer cities that are adopting 4D tax incentive policies, which allow owners of NOAA properties to do some rehab and receive a tax incentive, a tax break on their property taxes in exchange for preserving some of those units at an affordable rate. And we see dozens more communities in the comprehensive plans acknowledging 4D as a tool they could use, and giving specifically talking about how and when it will be considered over the next 10 years as a tool for preservation. The council also approved $1 million to Greater Minnesota Housing Fund's NOAA Impact Fund. And through the comp plan process, again, we're working really hard to make sure communities know that that is a tool that they can help influence, and that Greater Minnesota staff need their help to reach out to them, and they know their communities best and which properties might be good properties for that and other funding sources out there. So we've been a part of that conversation from the beginning, and are continuing to sit in that space and daylight what we need to daylight, and make sure that it's a part of the comprehensive plan content.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question about that? Do we think that the tools that we have can compete with the fact that this is a really hot housing market, and owners of these buildings are, investment companies are coming in local and from all over, offering really sweet deals to buy them? And can we compete? Are we seeing that what we have on the table now is helping to preserve some, or we just can't compete with the market?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Dorfman, yes and no. The devil's in the details, as it usually is. And so what we are learning, and what the preservation community has been learning through some of these tools that are really trailblazing and new, is that there are certain NOAA products that work really well under these tools. Generally, the size of a project and the location of a project that maybe isn't as competitive with the national market. We are well aware that the national market is absolutely in the Twin Cities looking for these properties and trying to turn them over. And no, we absolutely can't compete with how quickly they can, offer cash. But what we can do is continue to ask cities to work with these agencies because, again, cities often have those relationships with the property managers and know about the real estate opportunities kind of before they're above ground. And so the more we kind of work together and share what we know and continue to hone these tools, these financing tools to address, where the best use of those funds are for preservation, I think we can continue to do better. But yeah, we are absolutely still experiencing properties getting swooped up before, folks with some preservation money can even get to the table.
Thanks.
Lastly, we looked specifically at the share of 2017 production that was age restricted. So it was affordable senior housing, and that accounted for about a third of the units added in 2017. In 2016, the share was even higher. It was just over half, so it has come down somewhat. But as a trend, senior housing, affordable senior housing, has become has grown quite a bit since 2014 in terms of as a share of all new affordable units produced. These units are typically built at the higher end of affordable, between that 51 to 60% AMI range. And while there is definitely a demand for this product in the region's housing market, it's important to track because as we think about those as we think about the 1,700 units that we described as being added to the region's affordable housing, that's not necessarily accessible to all households, right? That need affordable units.
So I'm going to conclude and just kind of make sure that you are aware that in addition to a lot of this regional collaboration and collaboration with local governments, we are also, making sure that we are in communication with Minnesota Housing and the governor's office and participated in the governor's task force on housing initiative that was completed last year, and making sure that those sort of feedback loops from our own policies, from our partners, and from state policies are connected and aligned. And to that end, the governor's task force on housing recommends building 300,000 new homes by 2030 across all types, prices, and locations to stabilize prices and meet demand. So they are looking through the lens of the 6 goals and recommendations that you see on the slide. We are using those to continue to hone our work and think of it through the regional lens, and hope that we can provide you with a more optimistic update next year.
That concludes our presentation. We'll gladly accept any questions or comments that you might have.
Any questions? Councilmember Dorfman?
Just a couple of comments, which are issues contributing to this crisis, because I think it's a crisis, that we don't have a whole lot of control over. One is the cost of housing construction has gone up because the cost of materials has gone up and because of labor shortages. And frankly, the president's tariffs on aluminum, steel, and other products are going to exacerbate that. And we have the zoning policies are somewhat restrictive. Developers have told us they could build more affordable single-family homes, for example, that are smaller on smaller lots if the cities would let them. And so there are issues around zoning that I think zoning changes, and certainly some of the cities are looking at that, but that would make it easier to fill the growing gap we have in affordable housing across the region.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. I'm really interested to see what this report looks like in a couple of years. I have been out at a bunch of the communities we represent, both the cities and the counties, and there's a lot of active discussion around this now. Like it seems like people are seeing it more in their own communities that there's a need for housing across the spectrum. And so even with the new round of comprehensive plans, but also then seeing actual focused efforts, like I said, in Scott and Carver County, around affordable housing and different conversations. And so, like you said, this is built off of building permits. And so it may not show up for a couple of years, but I'd be really interested to kind of see how that evolves over time, because I think for years of trying to get people's attention, I think we've got their attention. So it'll be interesting what happens.
Thank you, Councilmember Barber. Councilmember
Do you
Dorfman.
have the cost burden, and I know Minnesota Housing Partnership does, but you reference cost burden households that are paying more than 30%. Do you have the data, or is it in here on those who are paying more than 50%? Because, you know, they talk about extremely cost burden, and there's a huge number of homes, or homeowners, not homeowners, but units where people are paying well over 50%.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Dorfman, we do have that information available. It is not in our report. We were just looking just purely at the cost burden at 30%. If memory serves me well, I can tell you that I think it's in the 13 to 14% range of households in the region, which would put us, you know, over 100,000 households.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be interested in hearing more information, if you have it, on the senior housing stuff, both when you're talking about the very low income people that are cost burdened. How many of those are seniors who maybe their house is worth a ton of money and they're still in it? So the property taxes alone are popping up as a cost burden, where they have assets if they chose to downsize their home, but have not chosen to do that, because that gives us a better picture of where people are at in the cost burdening. Because if you just plain don't have any money and you're struggling to pay your rent, that's a kind of a different situation than if you're sitting on a $500,000 house or $1 million house and you're retired and you just don't have cash coming in, but you have assets. And also, I would be interested in hearing more about the subsidized units for seniors and what kind of asset limitations they have, because I've heard from a couple of places that administer those sorts of properties that it's a pretty high asset limitation to get into those units. And, you know, if we really are trying to direct our dollars to where the most need is, subsidizing somebody so they can keep a big bank account, you know, when other people maybe don't even have a decent place to live, seems like a strange choice of priorities for public dollars.
Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Dorfman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was listening to the presentation, your presentation, and hearing about cost burden, I think what we landed on 4 years ago, working on the housing policy plan, was that that's a way, or a conventional way of viewing it. However, the real cost burden is adding transportation to that. If the person doesn't reside in an easily transit-oriented area. So that's when I talk with people about that in various presentations, et cetera, is to remind them about that, is what I call the hidden cost. It's another fixed cost, unless you or I live on a line.
Councilmember Dorfman.
I just wanted, and I can't remember where I got this, but I know it's data. You mentioned concentrated areas of poverty. So 48% of all renter households in North Minneapolis received an eviction notice over the last 3 years. And that doesn't count those who got a notice to vacate or were on a month-to-month lease that just wasn't renewed. And most of those households were were minority women-headed households. And that's crazy when you start looking at sort of the impact in communities like that.
Any other questions? Ladies, I want to thank you for both the data and the evaluation of what we're doing and what's working. If you want to see the face of our housing crisis, you just look at the homeless who are on our trains. Our trains have become a de facto shelter because there aren't enough shelter beds. And during the polar vortex, Councilmember Slavic and I went on the train and helped the St. Stephen's Street outreach workers do the count. And thanks to us providing 100 housing vouchers, we counted upwards of 200 people who found a safe, warm place on the train, but that's not where they want to be. They want a bed and they want a warm meal. And so, in the short term, we need to figure out how to provide more shelter beds. And when churches and mosques and synagogues say we have places, we have to find the funding so that we can staff them, keep them safe, and provide a warm meal. And in the long term, I learned one thing from our new housing commissioner, Jennifer Ho. I felt overwhelmed and I said, how do we fix this? And she said, we can, Jennifer, because we did. When all government agencies came together to address the Hiawatha encampment, people put their turf aside. And the goal was to find a warm, safe place for everybody to be. But there seems to me to be a problem if we're only concerned about providing stable housing during certain temperatures. To me, this has got to be something that we care about year round, and it's something that we have to address both long term and short term. But Commissioner Ho convinced me that we can do it if government agencies can work together. And I think the council plays a really powerful role in convening people as we look at what those solutions are going to be. In my district on Wednesday night, the community is going to push the elected officials. There's a huge push in Eden Prairie for 3 and 4 bedroom homes, for homes that are affordable to people under 30% of the area median income. And it's coming from the Somali community, from the faith community, from the labor community, everybody coming together with a common goal, working with the city and with the county to make things happen. And I'm optimistic that we can really make a difference. So thank you for being positive about a really a human tragedy.
Madam Chair, there's always an argument amongst homeless assistance agencies and people who are doing that work about what's the number of shelter beds we need, and there's always sort of a conflicting argument about shelter versus affordable housing, and there's no good answer to that, and it's going to fluctuate over time. But the bottom line is, and that I think most people agree on, is that shelter is not housing. And the only sustainable long-term answer to addressing homelessness is providing enough varied options of affordable housing. We are not going to solve this by just building shelter beds for either emergency situations or even long-term. So.
Thank you, folks. Great presentation, ladies. With that, can we take a look at our agenda items and see which ones should be on consent? Folks, it seems to me that items 1, 2, and 3 should be on consent. Item 4, the Livable Communities Fund Distribution Plan, should be non-consent?
Yeah.
Does that work? Good deal. With that, I accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Woohoo. Thank you, everybody.